Welcome everyone. We're just going to give a few more seconds. I see our participant number is growing, so as people are coming on, we will get started.
Sincerely wish I could be there with you tonight, but I am honored to be able to thank you for joining via this video message. The BGS Advantage webinar series, which is brought to you through the generous support of KPMG, was born out of BGS's determination to continue to deliver on our mission of connecting our lifetime members with professional development opportunities throughout the life cycle of your career, despite our inability to gather in person. The particular webinar that we have tonight is very special as we welcome representatives from KPMG to share their knowledge with you. You might not be aware, but KPMG has been a generous sponsor of Beta Gamma Sigma and an outstanding corporate partner for many years. Their continuing support has allowed our team to bring you things like this webinar, the BGS Gives Back program, and even our Global Leadership Summit. We're so grateful to KPMG for seeing the undisputed value in our BGS members and for their commitment to our mission. You can check out more details about the various BGS programs brought to you in part by the support of KPMG on our BGS website. I hope you'll take the opportunity to engage with the KPMG representatives on this webinar. And if you happen to apply for a KPMG position, please make sure you're listing Beta Gamma Sigma on your resume. Thank you all again for your participation tonight and enjoy the program.
Hello and welcome everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Katie Avendano. I'm the Associate Director of Membership for Beta Gamma Sigma, and I will be your host and moderator for today's session. We certainly want to encourage our participants to use the chat function to introduce yourself, shout out where you're joining us from, and even note what university you are representing. During the course of this session, we want this to be interactive. So we ask that you use the Q&A session for any questions that you might ask. We want you to walk away with actionable items. You certainly can utilize the Q&A at any time during this presentation, though we will answer most of them towards the end. If at any time you have any additional questions not related to the presentation, feel free to utilize the chat function. I'm so honored to welcome our presenters today. Deidre and Rob are with KPMG's University Talent Acquisition Program, and we're excited to have them present. I will go and turn it over to them, and thank you guys so much.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And guys, we are so very excited to be here with you tonight. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen really quickly. So just bear with me for a second as we get the presentation started. Okay. Perfect. Rob, is the screen coming through on your end?
I don't see it yet.
Okay. I will make sure it's coming. Okay, so screen 2. We'll double click share.
I see it now, Deidre.
You see it now, perfect. And it's the right version. It's not the annotated version.
Yes, it's the right version.
Perfect. Always like to check that first, because I know that sometimes it doesn't come through particularly well. But anyways, guys, hi everyone, and thank you so much for joining KPMG's session on networking and communication. We're so excited to take the time to meet with you guys to set up your future for success. And whether you're someone that's in your first year or second year of undergraduate studies, or a seasoned veteran who's currently completing an MBA, saw that come through the chat. We want to give you some tips to really help to both create and sustain some meaningful relationships. So before we get into the nuts and bolts of the presentation, Rob and I want to take the chance to introduce ourselves. My name is Deirdre Mattis, and I serve as a campus recruiting manager for KPMG. My entire career, which has been just about 6 years, I've sat out of our Chicago office, and I currently recruit amazing students interested in tax to come join KPMG. Rob, I'll go ahead and let you take it away.
Thanks, Deidre. Hello, everyone, and good evening. My name is Rob Favre, and I am a university recruiter at KPMG, and I sit in our Tyson's Corner or McLean, Virginia office. I've been with the firm a little bit over 4 years. I actually started my career in audit before making the transition over to university talent acquisition in April of 2020. So I actively recruit college students for internship and full-time positions at 6 colleges and universities in the Chesapeake business unit. So very, very excited and very, very happy to be here with you all this evening to talk about networking, communication, and building your brand, whether that's, virtually or in person or hybrid, as, things seem to be going nowadays. So I wanted to, kick it off by just kind of laying the groundwork and kind of laying the framework of, what is networking? And, networking is making connections, talking to people, going out, meeting people, but it's also using them wisely, right? I can always go up and talk to someone, but, networking is truly, making those connections and using them wisely to whatever benefits you the most. Maybe it's getting into a class, maybe it's finding out more about a company, or maybe it's even securing that, dream job that you really want. So, networking can kind of be 2 different ways. It can kind of be deliberate networking where, the example that I just gave of, you really want that internship or that full-time job, or you really want to get into that class or get the leadership position. So, you're deliberately networking with people to kind of get your name out there, get your experiences out there, but also learn more about the position, the job, or what have you. And there's also informal networking too, where, you have no agenda, you have no motive, you're kind of just going out, you're expanding your network, you're expanding your, the field that you're in, to truly just get to know people in the field, right? And, being an accounting major myself in undergrad, it was so ingrained in us that, you do informal networking to not only talk to people in your classes, but also just talk to people in the industry, right? Because there's so many different things you can do with an accounting degree, whether that's going into the big 4 accounting firms and doing audit, tax advisory, or maybe going into the industry and working for a non-for-profit or a financial institution, right? But the power of informal networking is you get to really feel out, what's good for you, what's not good for you, but also just expanding who you're talking to and who's in your network. And I always like to say, excuse me, that LinkedIn is a great way to informally network, right? Connecting with people on LinkedIn and kind of chatting with them, learning about their experiences to see, if that's something that you want to do down the road. But, at KPMG and just anywhere, I'd like to say that it's not a substitute for doing quality work, but it opens the door, right? I always like to say that your work product and how you do your client deliverables or you deliver your work speaks for yourself and gives you a name there. But the networking portion kind of opens the doors into different opportunities and different possibilities for where you may want to take your career, right? And I'm a product of that environment where I started in audit and I kind of wanted to do something different. And it's a little bit harder going into a field where you don't necessarily have direct experience. So I did my networking of going to the different recruiting events, working with the recruiting team to kind of get my feet wet and put my name out there and saying, hey, I'm looking to make a career change. Is there anything, available at the time? And, there may or may not have been, but, the quality of my work in the practice really set that forth and really set that tone so that when an opportunity did kind of open up, they're like, oh yeah, we know Rob does good work. He would be an awesome recruiter or whatever the situation is. So I just wanted to quickly just lay the groundwork of what networking is, the different kinds, and letting you know that, it's an effective tool, especially now more so than ever, but it's not the end all be all, right? You have to do good work and produce quality work so that you can set yourself up for successful networking. So, I just gave you, the definition of network, but, I'm sure you're wondering, why network? Why do I have to go to these career fairs? Why do I have to connect with people on LinkedIn? Why do I have to go talk to people, after I've had a long day? But, it's really an investment in your future, right? You're building those connections, you're building those relationships to be able to learn more about a field or maybe secure that internship or really just, expand your network, right? I think that that's really key nowadays is, you don't want to just stay pigeonholed into your classes or your company or in your major or your field. You want to be able to network and, cross-utilize and cross-function across all the different, networks or possibilities that are endless to you. It helps you ensure success. There's a lot of things that I learned through networking that really propelled my career and helped me in my career of, making sure that I was talking to the right people. I was doing the right things. I was applying on the correct website even. So it really, really helps you set yourself up for success, and it also ensures your success as well. Meeting new people is probably my number one favorite thing about networking, right? That's why I love recruiting. I get to talk to a lot of students, a lot of professionals, a lot of career services, and you just get to meet new and diverse and interesting people that I really wouldn't have been able to if I wasn't in a networking position or I wasn't going out and networking, right? I always like to say that you learn most from the stories and the people that tell those passionate stories. And truly networking allows me to meet those new people and also find, commonalities, right? Oh, I also like tennis and I'm talking to someone that does tennis. Or, oh my gosh, I also graduated from Penn State. Let's talk about all the things we were involved with there. Meeting new people is a great way and networking kind of fosters that. Like I've kind of been touching on, and identifies potential new opportunities. I never say, shut the door on an opportunity. Through networking, you're able to kind of go through the conversations, go through talking with people. And maybe, they mention, oh, my company is actually hiring for X position. And you're like, oh, wait, I'm actually really interested in that. Can you talk to me more about it? Can you, give me more information about it? It definitely identifies potential new opportunities. But the end all be all, really, it's fun. I love going out and talking to people and chatting with people and, talking work or not talking work or, whatever that it is. But, networking is really fun because you get to hear those diverse perspectives, but you also get to, make some friends out of it, right? There are some people that I've been networking with that I, didn't go to school with, didn't work with, weren't in my major, but because I've networked with them, they're some of my closest and bestest of friends. So really, really, all of those reasons up and down the gambit there. But networking is so fun, and I know, being an introvert myself, hated networking at the beginning, right? Hated going up to someone that I didn't know, didn't really feel comfortable with, but doing it a lot more often, whether it's virtually related or in person, you get a master at it. And now I like to say that I'm a trained extrovert, where I enjoy talking to people and going out and networking amongst the different groups or the different paths that I have in front of me. So it's a great segue. Totally forgot that this was also coming up in the slide, but there's some things that that make networking uncomfortable, or what stops us from networking. It's the uncomfortableness and being embarrassed, right? Oh my gosh, this person's gonna think that I'm a weirdo because I don't have similar interests to them, or oh my gosh, I haven't gone up and talked to anyone. This is my first company. It's awkward and it's embarrassing. It can be a little bit uncomfortable too, because you don't know how to kind of talk to a person, whether that's virtually or in person, or bringing up the fact that you're looking for an internship or a full-time job, right? The other barrier that stops us from networking is that we don't know how to, right? It's a skill, it's an art. You really have to know the ins and outs and how to network appropriately and properly, and really satisfy both you getting to know the company, the position, the people, but also satisfying what you want out of it, right? I really want that internship and I need to know how to apply. To be quite frank too, there's better things to do, right? You sit in a presentation, even, maybe we'll say this presentation for example, right? And maybe there's a networking portion after, you just want to log off, go eat dinner, relax, and turn on the TV, right? There's better things to do, but I think that through Deirdre and I kind of presenting tonight, you'll kind of see the benefits of networking, so that, you kind of say, okay, I don't have to stay for the whole hour of the networking portion, but maybe I'll be fruitful and, connected for the first 15, 20 minutes, get what I need out of it, and then I can go do the other things that I promised. But also too, it takes effort. It takes a lot, to go up to talk to someone, to have those questions prepared, to really put your full effort and energy toward it, so that you can get out of it what you need, right? But it's kind of being like that extra added on effort of, okay, I just sat in a 2-hour presentation information session. Right now I have to go talk to someone. Like, it's going to take that extra effort, but I hope that through our presentation, we're able to kind of not only squash these boundaries, but we also show you, effective ways to make that effort not feel like an effort, and kind of make it more natural in your everyday business setting.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Rob. And now we're going to go ahead and, now that we've got the foundation of what networking is and why we should do it, we'd like to share 3 steps with you that we've kind of established that will really help you to be successful in all of your networking endeavors. So one thing to note is that networking is an ongoing loop, and it doesn't just happen in real time, as you might think. When you're attending an event, whether it be, a career fair, or perhaps there's an event that an organization is hosting on your campus at, for a happy hour, or within your college of business or your school, you're going to want to take 3 different steps when you're going through that networking. The first one is you want to plan in advance. You want to make sure that you've researched the company and have done your due diligence to make sure that you feel comfortable and confident and that you're bringing your best self to the table when you're attending that event. The second step, which you all are doing tonight by attending this presentation that Rob and I are putting on, is actually attending. Making sure that you're there, you're present the entire time, and you're engaged with the professionals or the people that you're interacting with throughout the entire event. And then last but not least, the third step is going to be to follow up. One of the biggest things with networking is that it doesn't just end when the event does. Like for example, for tonight, after our presentation is over at 6 p.m. Central Time, it doesn't mean that the network that you've created with us necessarily needs to end. And it's in that intentional follow-up that you're really able to create those meaningful connections that last beyond a single event and really will help to, create dividends in your career. So the first piece that we have is the planning. And like I mentioned, I think that we oftentimes think of networking as a one-time live event where you're attending, you're doing a good job, and then you're going home. But the thing is, the best networkers definitely take the time to plan before they engage with others to really make sure that they're able to take the most out of an event. And I can even speak to that as somebody that's been in campus recruiting for 4 years. And Rob and I actually have very similar stories. We both started in audit and then moved into the campus recruiting space. But it really is, taking that time to really reflect upon the why of your attendance. Are you attending to meet a new connection that can help to lead to a new job? Are you attending because you're really interested in an organization and you want to know more about how you can get back to a non-for-profit? Spending the time to really understand that with them, what's in it for me and how it's going to help you to continue on and grow your network will really help you to be successful in any networking event that you attend. So the biggest thing too is, I know that we've talked about how planning is really important. It doesn't always need to be a super time intensive process. There might be times that you walk into your school of business and you see a company that you're really interested in, that you didn't know was going to be there that day. But spending a couple of minutes before walking up to that booth or attending that event is not just going to help you to have a better knowledge of what exactly is going on at that event, but it's also going to help your comfortability. It's going to help you to feel confident when you're stepping up to that recruiter, stepping up to that professional, even stepping up to that classmate, to really feel that you're bringing your best self to the table. I think it also helps because for folks that might not be as comfortable in a networking setting, the more you prepare in advance, the more you're gonna be able to ease those nerves that might come up before or during an event. I still remember, looking back and reflecting upon my very first year at the University of Illinois. I remember being absolutely terrified at my first career fair. I walked in and there were seemingly hundreds of companies that I knew nothing about and didn't really know how to make that first step to start chatting with them. And had I actually done my research and my due diligence beforehand, I think I would have stepped in feeling a lot more confident. So the more that you're doing on the front end, the better that you'll feel in some of those, uncomfortable situations. And giving yourself those tools beforehand can really help. Before attending the event too, it's really important for you to know, what you want to gain from attending. If it's something, where you're really early in the recruiting cycle and maybe you don't have a job in mind with that particular company, it might be something where you're information gathering to figure out if there's a role there that is really a good fit for you, or even sometimes figuring out what a firm or company does. Conversely, it might be an opportunity, Rob and I are still networking in our careers, where maybe you're interested in a certain person's line of work, or you're interested in getting involved in one of the business resource groups or an extracurricular at the company that you're working in. And you'd like to figure out a way that you can make yourself stand apart and get on projects of that nature in the future. Having that goal will really help you to maximize your time and your effort when you're going to the event, to make sure that you're talking to the right people and really having that maximum impact when you're attending. You also can find out who's attending the event to make sure that you're meeting the, appropriate or relevant people when you get there. You really, I think that oftentimes you can, especially in this virtual world that you're living in, you can see who the presenters are at a particular event in advance. Or you can, even if it's at your school career center, you might be able to see that list online. And going ahead and identifying who you want to talk to, maybe even looking at their LinkedIn profile, will really help you to find, the right person to talk to and help you to make the most out of that event. This also works too if you're looking, if you're looking for a particular job and you definitely want to talk to someone, speaking to the KPMG language in the tax practice. Knowing who those folks are that are in that group beforehand will really help you to prepare in advance. I also would say that, let's say that you don't know who's going to be in an event. Oftentimes talking to someone like the recruiter or the person in charge will really help you to identify, I know I want to talk, like I said, I want to talk to someone in tax. Talking to, the person that's at that sign-in table will really help you to connect with the right individuals. Another really important thing too is to watch and observe others. This will really help you to pick up on social cues that are taking place at a particular event. The goal of networking is certainly not just to have a one-way dialogue where you're talking and the other person is listening. You're going to want to engage with that individual, really hear about their experience and have that two-way conversation. I'd also recommend, and this I think really comes with experience, but really kind of observe how the room is flowing. If you're looking and it seems like it's more of a speed networking event where folks are talking to people for just a couple of minutes and then moving on, you really want to kind of follow those social norms and cues to make sure that you're kind of keeping with how the event has been structured and formatted. A great example of that is at a career fair. Oftentimes when you, again, thinking about live and in person, but even virtually, there might be a line of 10 people that are waiting to speak to a professional. In that situation, you probably don't want to talk to someone or attempt to talk to someone for 20 minutes. In that environment, you're probably going to want to give, a 2-minute pitch about why you're interested in an organization, ask a couple meaningful questions of the professional, and then recognize that, it's time to move on to the next person. Conversely, if you're at something more casual where people are standing in groups, it may be more appropriate to have a 10 to 15-minute conversation with that individual. So I think just, again, really observing your surroundings to make sure that you can make a great impression on the individual with you're speaking. The last thing I would say is do your homework and know your facts. If a certain organization is hosting an event, and I'll use our favorite organization, KPMG, as an example, know what KPMG does. I know, we joke on the recruiting team, but many of us have been asked before if KPMG is a radio station at different recruiting events. And it might sound silly, but if you can know, what KPMG does, maybe if you're interested in a particular city, knowing if we've got opportunities available there, you'll really be able to soar ahead of your peers and make an impact on the professionals that you're talking to. And just to give you some examples, here's some great things that we'd suggest that you might know about KPMG before you would attend an event. So as you may or may not know, KPMG is one of the big 4 professional services firms. We've got 3 total lines of business that we typically will hire undergraduate and graduate students into. Those are audit, tax, and advisory. You'll also learn that different accounting firms, some of our competitors may have different nomenclature for the exact same or similar roles. It's always impressive if a student knows particularly which line of business they're interested in at our recruiting events. So for example, if you're interested in, in advisory, instead of saying I'm interested in consulting, if you can say I'm interested in your strategy practice at KPMG, it really shows that you did your homework and looked into the overarching picture of what advisory does versus just, throwing out a buzzword. I think oftentimes using the company website, reaching out to the host in advance, or even asking for information will really help you to stand out and will help to show that you're really serious about the opportunity at hand. And we definitely can always tell when folks have done their homework in advance. Another great thing to learn about too is beyond just the roles that they're offering, I think it's really important to understand a firm's culture as well as their enhancements. And one example at KPMG that we have is one that actually opened last year. So we opened, as you can see in our wonderful slide, the KPMG Lake House. It's a state-of-the-art learning, development, and innovation facility that further enhances the world-class training capabilities we offer to our partners and professionals. So within this building, it's kind of a one-stop shop. We've got meeting spaces that have screens all around so that you're fully engaged in the learning opportunity. We've got 800 single occupancy rooms that are similar to, a 4- or 5-star hotel across the country. And I think most importantly, at our lake house, we've got so many elements that really celebrate the culture of KPMG. From our efforts with KFFL, which stands for KPMG Families for Literacy, which aims to, bring books into the hands of students that may be low income and ensure that literacy is prevalent throughout, a lot of our communities, particularly those that are underserved. We also have a lot of things dedicated to innovation and the ways that KPMG has really stood out in the marketplace. Additionally, some of our fun features, so to speak, include the multiple dining areas, amenities, including a fitness facility, a hiking and biking path. In fact, when I was there, I was able to run around our, 1.5-mile trail a couple of times. And, we also have some recreational fields where you really connect and unwind with your coworkers in both a, professional environment, but then in an informal environment when the day is over. Really the networking certainly doesn't end once you complete your recruiting process. It's just the beginning and continues, even when you join the firm and attend and go to a facility just like the lake house. Something to point out too that I think is an easy barrier to entry, right, is where the heck do you find this information about different organizations? And I'd say the best place to start is their website. So certainly, for KPMG, that's kpmgcampus.com, but whatever organization that you're, interested in learning more about, their website will typically have a lot of different things that will really give you insight into what's important to them. This also goes for a lot of your school events too. If there's an organization that you're really interested in joining or rushing, being able to check out their website will really help you to stand out. I mean, I'm not sure when you guys are applying for BGS, you probably checked out Beta Gamma Sigma's website as well to really make sure that it was a commitment that you were really, that you really wanted to employ. Some other really great resources beyond online and, using the web are talking to different peers who may have interned at that particular organization or maybe have already started a role there. And I also think, you can never undervalue the importance of friends and families in your network that may be in an industry that you're interested in or may have exposure to that organization and can really help you to further your knowledge of that organization and that event that you're attending. So now that we've talked a lot about the planning piece, let's go ahead and move on to the show itself, which is attending the event. So the first thing to kind of talk about is the fact that there are a whole slew of events that you can attend with different organizations, both live as well as virtually. Here we've got a listing of just a couple of different events that KPMG and like companies host. And something to note is that these can oftentimes vary in both size and format. So it's really, it's always a good idea to check in with a friend who's maybe attended something similarly, or even the recruiter beforehand, if there's anything that you should prepare specifically beforehand. Because, you always want to be prepared to make that first impression before the event. I would say, one thing that you'll notice too is they've got different levels of formality. Career fairs might be really formal, whereas a one-on-one meeting, you might be able to let your hair down a little bit and have a more casual conversation with a professional. We also offer a lot of different social and networking events where, again, you can ask some of those more casual questions. So really just, having a good baseline for what exactly you're attending will help you to be successful in your networking event. The next piece to cover is what to do and what perhaps not to do when you are networking. The first thing is to avoid the infamous huddle. Oftentimes, there are a lot more students that are attending an event than a company might bring down in professionals. And what we oftentimes see happen is that there's one professional with a group of students huddled around he or she. And oftentimes, when that circle becomes too big, it becomes less of a conversation and more of a rapid fire, presentation, question and answer session. So really be mindful of how many people are engaging with a professional at a time? If you see someone from a company who's maybe standing in the corner and isn't talking to someone, that might be a really great connection to make, whether or not you're particularly interested in what they're doing, in order to kind of wait out that timeline until the professional that you're hoping to speak to has availability. I'd also say that something that's really important is introductions. We always like to say that it only takes a couple of seconds to make a great first impression. And by following these tips, you really can do so. First things first, having a firm handshake and smiling. This is also something that you can do virtually too, really making sure that you're, as silly as this is, staring into that camera lens versus looking somewhere else on your screen really helps you to stand out and shows that you're engaged with the person that you're chatting with. We also like to joke there's such a thing as kind of a limp fish handshake. Make sure that you're coming at a handshake when we're out of this period of COVID, firmly and really confidently. I think that goes a long way in really showing that you're an engaged and innovative candidate. You also want to make small talk. You certainly don't want to derail the conversation too much, but really just being able to show that there's, you're a whole person outside of just that professional demeanor that you have. Really, being able to connect with the person that you're chatting with will really help to go a long way. You want to pay attention to what the person says too. I think that oftentimes one of the keys to networking is being a great listener. And that definitely, comes from listening to not just thinking about what your next question is of somebody, but really focusing on what their answer is and really taking in the knowledge that they're sharing with you about their organization. You certainly always want to be positive as well. Don't want to say anything super negative about an organization. You want to really show your enthusiasm versus asking those super hard-hitting questions, at least in this environment. And then again, like I said, maintaining that good eye contact, whether you're live and in person or in a virtual area. Similarly, you're going to want to avoid touchy subjects. We talk about avoiding things like religion and politics, really just keeping the conversation focused upon the organization and the organizational culture too. There's talk in a professional environment, it's probably not the best opportunity for you to be exploring those hot button issues. I think it's also important to, be positive and interesting throughout the discussion. Really make sure that you're asking good questions. And I always recommend to, prepare those questions in advance. Have a list written out that maybe, even at an event like in a career fair, maybe you're recycling between companies, but that really shows that you've done your due diligence. And then the last piece is when you're closing, definitely make sure to thank the individual for their time and request a business card. If it's a virtual event, you also could ask them to drop their information in the chat so that you can, link it, become connections with them on LinkedIn, as well as send them an email. Now looking at perhaps what not to do. The first thing is that you don't want to ask, what does your company do? I know we just spent a lot of time talking about planning, but that's a really big part of it. And even again, if you randomly come across an event at your student center, you always have the power of your cell phone to take a look at what that organization does so that you really do seem knowledgeable when you're walking up to the table or when you're talking to individuals. Again, it really shows that you are both interesting and interested in what that organization is offering. The next piece is, I know I've talked about this, so I'm not going to harp too much, but don't monopolize time. Recognize that, there may be other people that want to have those same conversations. So making sure you're being respectful and reading the room about, how long you should be spending with each individual. Another thing too is I know that oftentimes at events like career fairs, there is tons and tons of swag, and no one likes swag as much as campus recruiters. But don't get greedy with the giveaways. You want to take a look at, again, what is the purpose of you being at that event? Is it to score the world's best branded cup or mug, or is it to really make a great connection that you can then use to hopefully land a full-time job or an internship? Certainly don't feel like you can't take something, but have the focus be on the conversation versus, what goodie you can grab from the table. Again, don't just leave your resume on the table. Make sure that you're having a conversation. And then last but not least, don't overstay your welcome. If you're at a networking event that lasts for an hour and a recruiter gets up and says, hey guys, thanks for joining, we're closing up, definitely, take that social cue to leave. I know that sometimes we have students that are so interested and want to showcase that they, have a passion, that they sometimes make the adverse impression because they're overstaying when the event clearly ended. So just kind of read the room. Super helpful and help you to stand out. And then last but not least, before I pass it on to Rob, really quickly just wanted to show some event etiquette of our virtual environment. So one thing to virtual as well as live environment. One thing to say is that you want to RSVP for every event that you are invited to during the process, even if it's a no. So for example, you might get invitations to 30 throughout the course of the fall semester. I know Rob says he's on 6 different campuses. He might be hosting, again, 30 events for each of his campuses. And it's not you can attend every single one. Just make sure that you're RSVPing, because oftentimes that will show your interest. And I also would say that if you do RSVP, make sure that you're following through. If something comes up last minute, definitely email the recruiter just to say that you're still really interested, you just can't make it. I think that oftentimes is a lot more helpful than just leaving things unsaid. And that over communication does go a long way for us. You also, if you have signed up for an interview, definitely try not to cancel that. I think that, certainly, some of the informational sessions, it's a little bit easier to cancel, but you definitely want to honor your commitment when it comes to the interview itself. You also, one thing to note is that you can decline an interview. Let's say that you've already decided that company A is really where you want to spend your career, and you've received an offer for that organization. It's okay to then say, I was really interested in this, but I don't necessarily want to consider it anymore. I think the biggest thing is that if you are going to decline an interview, do it before you sign up. Don't do it, 2 hours beforehand after you've landed an offer. Another thing to note is if a company is offering a pre-interview reception, definitely attend it. This is oftentimes a really great way for you to get to read the culture of different companies, and also will really give you kind of that leg up into perhaps meeting your interviewer before the day of the interview. You also want to, spend time talking to the different greeters. They're oftentimes more junior in your career, and they might have some great perspective on, what your life will look like, when you start as a first day associate or member of an organization. And then last thing, in the virtual environment, just make sure that you're being cognizant of your background. Certainly, I'll say that at a lot of our career fairs, we see students that are talking to us from their dorm rooms, and that is totally okay. That might be the place that is the quietest for them, where they're really able to focus and concentrate. I think the biggest thing is just make sure that there's not a crud ton of noise going on around you. So perhaps, the local recreation center at your school where you might see people lifting weights in the background isn't the best environment. I think making sure that you're going somewhere that's quiet, where you can be fully intentional, will again help you to focus and will help you to make the best impression. And Rob, I'll go ahead and pass it off to you to talk a little bit about follow-up.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Deirdre. So, Deirdre went into great detail and gave you some awesome, information about how to plan before you go into a networking event or just any event, what you should and should not do as you attend. But now I'm going to kind of, bring it home and talk about the follow-up. What do you do post-event after you've kind of attended and you've, networked, you've chatted, you've done what you needed to do at the event? So first and foremost, you're going to follow up by whatever means is most appropriate and is necessary, right? And I think that the most common way is following up through email after you've kind of gotten a business card, or maybe it's even, seeing them the next day when they're, passing by and saying, hey, it was so great seeing you last night. Thank you so much for all the information you gave. But, when you kind of follow up, you want to make sure that you follow up in a timely manner. And I usually like to say 24 to 48 hours after the event. To really just follow up and thank the presenter for their time, or thank them for coming to campus, or whatever that it is. Anywhere outside of the 48 hours, it's kind of a moot point, and you didn't take the necessary time to do it at the beginning. So making sure that you follow up at least in a timely manner, and it also helps you as a person who's trying to network, in that 24 to 48 hour period, you are still going to be fresh in my mind as a recruiter, right? I'm going to remember that I talked to Deirdre at the tax career fair, and she followed up with me within 24 hours afterwards. Whereas, you go outside of that, time frame, I'm already at my next event. I'm already talking to 200 more students, right? And it'll be kind of hard to decipher from there. So just making sure that you follow up in a timely manner. This is my number one pet peeve, and I think that I always like to stress on it, make sure that you check spelling and grammar. There is nothing more infuriating than getting a nice follow-up email and the person used the wrong form of there, and there, or they misused the form of to, and to, right? Making sure you take that extra time and you're diligent in checking the spelling and grammar of the email message, the thank you note, whatever that it is, before sending it or giving it to the appropriate individual.
I also would say, Rob, as someone who perhaps has a little bit of a more unique name, if you get a business card for someone, or if they type out the way their name is spelled, just make sure that you're taking a look to type their name, the way that they spell it. As silly as that is kind of your first electronic impression to them. So taking the time to make sure that you spell their name right also goes a long way too.
No, I think that's, a great point, Deirdre. And, I'm a little privileged in the fact that you can't really misspell Robert, right? But Deirdre may be a little bit harder to roll off the tongue or even type on a keyboard. So no, that's a great point too, is making sure the whole email, right, is so key. And I know that a lot of people will reach out to me on LinkedIn and you'll copy and paste messages, right? And, the starter will be like, hi, Ben. Well, clearly I'm not Ben. You see that I'm not Ben. You're on my profile, right? So just making sure that you're checking names, spelling, and grammar. But then you also personalize the message, right? And I get a lot of blanket thank you emails that I know that this person has sent to the 5 other recruiters that they talked to, right? But the ones that are more meaningful are hey, Deirdre, thank you so much for chatting with me at the career fair. I really enjoyed our conversation about your company. Looking forward to staying in contact with you throughout the recruitment process. Also, I hope your dog is doing well and, you're able to go to the park this weekend. That extra added on thing at the end will resonate with me and Deirdre and any recruiter so well, so that when I'm kind of going through the applications, right, and maybe there's one last spot and I have to kind of pick, I'm going to be able to say, oh yeah, I remember talking to Deirdre. She said that she had a dog and she was really hoping to take it to the park, right? It's those little things and those little nuances that really go a long way, and it just makes the information and the thank you email so much more sweet and a lot more personalized. Also, something to remember too in the follow-up, if you promise that you'll send them their transcript, or, oh yeah, I'll provide you my resume, that you really do keep to those agreements and commitments, right? Nothing is more infuriating than, when I request a resume and you say, oh yeah, I'll definitely do it, and you have it in writing, and then I never hear from you again. You're, a week, 2 weeks late with it. Just making sure that you're timely and you keep those agreements and commitments that you so promised, either in person or through the follow-up message. So, that was really short and quick with the follow-up, but, really just wanted to briefly touch on other forms of networking that you're able to kind of partake in, both in person and virtually, that will help communicate the brand that you want to portray, whether that's a virtual brand or, a face-to-face in-person brand. So there's written and verbal communication, I guess, modes or methods that you're able to kind of communicate your brand and either do the follow-up, the initial, outreach, whatever that it is. So email, whenever you're talking in email, keep it professional. Make sure that the subject line is being used effectively, right? Don't make it a really long run-on sentence. Don't make it a question that you want to ask. Make it very succinct and very descriptive, so that, when Deirdre and I as recruiters are inevitably going through our thousands and hundreds of emails, it's easy to pick up on, oh, okay, I know there's a date that the student put in there. Let me just search for that date, and it easily comes up, rather than just the generic follow-up, right? Because I'm going to receive hundreds, if not thousands, of the same kind of subject line. Again, I'm a hit home on this. Make sure you check the spelling, your grammar every single time. You check the spelling of the name, that your name is spelled correctly, all of that good stuff. Really avoid shorthand messaging and texting. So I know that, I'll go over this on the phone, but, an email is not a text message. So making sure that you're not doing the IDKs, the TTYLs, the LOLs, making sure that you're keeping that professional tone and you're not using any shorthand language. Make sure that you create a signature line. And I think that this is becoming more and more prevalent, nowadays, but, it doesn't have to be some lavish, extravagant thing, right? All I really need to see is your name, where you go to school, maybe your graduation year, an email and a good number to reach you at, so that if I'm trying to quickly flip through and go through things and I need to follow up with you, I'm able to immediately find it, right? And I don't have to go into the application system and find your email or your phone number. So making sure that you create a good and effective signature line. I think this is becoming more and more prevalent nowadays. And Deirdre, I'm sure you've had some scares or some, ick moments with the reply versus the reply all. Making sure that you're using that appropriately, right? If it's between, if I'm sending out a mass email and it's a question that's more directed towards your situation or a specific situation, maybe the reply feature is a little bit better than the reply all, and having everyone on that email communication knowing your business, knowing your question. However, though, if it is, a question that's good for the betterment of the group, maybe, hey, Rob, could you just reconfirm when we need to apply by? That's a good reply all situation, right? Where I'm able to get the information out to a wide group of people that, best serves the wide group of people. And making sure too in your email that you update, the out of office automatic replies. I think that that's super key where, I've been on campus and doing in-person events all day today. And, I had not been checking my email as frequently. So I had that out of office on to let people know that, hey, I got your email, currently busy. I'll follow up with you when I'm able to, just so that the person isn't left in the dust and wondering, oh, Rob usually responds pretty quickly and now he's not taking his, he's taking a lot longer to reply. Oh, did I mess it up? Is he, not interested? Whatever the situation is. Mentioning phone, talking through the phone, making sure that you have a professional tone. If you have to leave a voicemail, making sure that it's clear, concise, and right to the point. Making sure that you put your first and last name in that message, right? I don't have everyone's number saved. I don't plan on having everyone's number saved. So it'll be really, really hard and difficult if you just say, hey, I was wondering if you could follow up with me regarding open applications, right? And I'm like, okay, well, I don't know who this 610 number is or this 570 number, right? But if you say, hey, this is Rob Favre, I met you at the career fair, just wanted to follow up with, et cetera, then I'm able to kind of work through mine and making sure that I give you the right information. Making sure that you repeat the phone number in which you want me to call you back at twice and slowly so that I'm able to kind of jot it down or type it or clearly understand it. And then making sure that, if you do have your voicemail set up, that it does have a proper greeting and that your voicemail, is very appropriate for someone that may need to leave a message. So again, talking about networking and making it useful to you, but letting it navigate your brand to success, right? Letting it help you find the best method, the best mode to kind of network, get your brand out there, and really, whether it's deliberate or informal networking, letting your network navigate your brand to success in whatever way that it's most advantageous and beneficial to you. So, I think now more so than ever, it's so important to be cognizant and mindful of your virtual brand, right? Your virtual brand is how you're portrayed in social media. It's the image that you've kind of built for yourself to be shared with others. So, knowing that, watching your tone as it can be easily misconstrued in the virtual realm, right? I've read a ton of emails, or I'm even conscious of it, right? Where I'm sending an email and I'm like, ooh, can the person take this as maybe being a little unprofessional or maybe a little bit sassy when I don't want it to be? But also being careful with what you put in writing too, as you never know who's gonna end up seeing it or where it's gonna end up, right? I always like to say things in writing are final, and it's very, very hard to back out of it if oh no, I totally didn't say that. Well, I actually have an email from you saying that you did say that sort of thing. So, just knowing your audience and knowing that it may not stay with that person is super, super key as you're kind of building your virtual brand and being cognizant of how you talk and network virtually. Again, just touching upon, some of these virtual branding techniques is, you can build quite a reputation for yourself before you ever meet someone in person, right? And I'm, as a recruiter, super prone to this, where if I see a student sign up for my office hours, I'm immediately going to their LinkedIn profile to learn more about them. So making sure that that's cleaned up, that's professional, and knowing that, that's your first impression without me even getting a chance to meet you in person, right? I'm looking at your profile and I'm viewing what your major is, what you're involved in and everything. That's setting the tone for when I'm going to sit down and have a chat with you about what opportunities, are best suited for you and, representing your professionalism virtually. friends today may be clients tomorrow, right? I always like to think that, the people that you're talking with in your classes or at these networks or whatever, you may be working with them or for them, later on down the road. So just making sure that you maintain, those good those good relationships, both personally and professionally. Employers do pick up on your virtual brand. We're in the virtual space, we're out on LinkedIn, we're looking at your profiles, and we're looking at, to see if you're engaged in these virtual settings, right? Do you have your camera off when everyone else has their camera on? Are you engaging, asking questions? Or are you just kind of staring off into space and not really paying attention? We pick up on that, and that's kind of, you telling us your virtual brand. Making sure that you know that once you put something on the internet, it's virtually impossible to truly take it back and get it off out there. I always like, to know, consider who could see your virtual postings or what you post on social media. And really, thinking, can it be seen in a negative light, right? I always like to do random Google searches on myself to see what kind of my stuff is out there too, right? Oh, okay, it's just my LinkedIn and my KPMG profile and nothing else that I may post, then that's good, right? But maybe if I'm sharing something, I have to be cognizant of, oh man, is a student who I'm going to be recruiting going to be able to see that, and is it going to be taken negatively? Okay, maybe I don't want to post it, and maybe I want to make it, just to my social friend group as opposed to my professional network. Always thinking too, as you're about to post something or do something, would you want your parents, teachers, someone that you really, really look up to, would you want them to see it, and how would it be perceived to them? So, I always like to say, as you're kind of evaluating that virtual brand, think before you post. It's always better to be safe than sorry. And when in doubt, opt out. Listen to your gut, really feel, okay, I'm not really feeling this is going to be shown in a most positive way. I'm not going to post it, and I'm just going to, go on with my day or do whatever. So, all things to kind of take into consideration and remember as you're kind of building that virtual brand for yourself. And, just as we wrap up here, let your virtual brand be virtually flawless, right? Don't make it harder on yourself to have to backtrack on your comments or the post that you made, but also use it to your advantage to, oh, I know that KPMG does a lot of LinkedIn outreach. I'm going to connect with some people on LinkedIn that work at KPMG because I know they have a good outreach, and that's you better using it. Whereas, maybe another company, they prefer to be outreach through email. Go through the email and maybe not connect on LinkedIn because, it's now beneficial to you if you just go through LinkedIn and you know that recruiter or that, professional isn't going to be checking in as frequently. That's all that we had for you this evening. I hope that you were able to kind of learn more about networking, those three, the plan, attend, and follow up steps, but also, just how to build your virtual brand. And I think that it's becoming more and more prevalent nowadays, to making sure that you're not only in tip-top shape in person as we kind of head back to in-person, networking and events, but also making sure that virtual networking brand is also kept up, to the nines, and making sure that that's crisp and clean as well.
So thank you guys for joining us for the presentation. We're now happy to answer any questions that you might have. I know that we went a little bit over, so sorry about that, but happy to answer questions.
Well, thank you so much. We did have a couple of questions. So as a reminder for anybody that is joining us, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the Q&A section. So the first question we got are, what is some pointers about networking internationally?
Sure. I think that's a really great question. And I think the first thing to point to is, as we all know, a lot of companies are really reaching international borders. I know KPMG, for example, has locations in over 150 different countries. And so oftentimes our professionals really are challenged to network, not just with our US firm, but with folks that sit across, the entire world. And I think, there's a couple different things that we'd recommend. And Rob, please feel free to add on to this. I think the first thing is recognizing that when you are, networking internationally, there may be cultural norms that exist in the United States that may not exist in, another country, or vice versa. So really just making sure that you're being respectful of the culture of the folks in the country with which you're networking. I also think too that, oftentimes it's a little bit more difficult to, even at KPMG, we may hear from a client and they say, hey, we're really interested in better understanding how the tax structure works in Germany, and we'd really like to have a German specialist on our team. I think not being afraid to really dig deep into the pocketbooks of your network to find those individuals will really help to set you up for success. Oftentimes, it may not be my connection at KPMG that'll be valuable for somebody else, but it'll be my ability to connect them to John, who can connect them to Steve, who really finds that great connection that's able to either help a client, or in your case, help to land a job somewhere else. Rob, anything you want to add?
Deidre, I think you answered that greatly. And, I just wanted to add on, doing it internationally, you have to put a little bit more intention behind it, right? Domestically, nationally, you go to events, you talk, you network in that way. But when you want to network with someone internationally that may not come over, you have to kind of make it a point and put in a little bit more of that effort, what we were talking about earlier, to connect with them on LinkedIn, talk to someone at the domestic firm, like Deirdre said, that may be able to put you in touch with someone internationally. But I would just say, there's a little bit more effort and intention behind it when you want to do it internationally.
Wonderful. So we have another question related to LinkedIn networking. So the note is here that sometimes they receive requests from people that they do not know. Sometimes the individual will state that they're requesting for information related to an interview, and the individual accepts. What they're unsure of is, what is your opinion on networking with people who you don't know well at all? The ask is because sometimes it seems as though LinkedIn people just want to get a large network, and as part of their strategy, rather than actually trying to connect and help one another.
Yeah, I would say, whenever you kind of network via LinkedIn, maybe in, the initial outreach one, only ever keep people in the network, right? Or in the same major or from the same school or anything. But, whenever you network via LinkedIn, making it a conscious effort to have a call to action item in that initial outreach, right? Hey, Deirdre, saw you presented the BGS, presentation today. It was really, really great hearing from you. Wanted to know if you could give me the application website to apply to your thing, right? You are more likely to connect with someone and know someone through that and be able to have it more purposeful and intentional when there's a call to action, rather than just connecting willy-nilly with whoever may come across, your suggested people or the people you may know. So, I always I never accept to someone that may not be in my purview, right? I may not know every student at my university, but if I know that, okay, I'm the recruiter at the College of William and Mary, and someone from that school connects me to that, or, connects me from there, I'm going to accept that because they're in my purview, they're in my realm, they're in kind of the space that I am. But, it's a little bit harder to do it when, I may not know that they are from a school that we recruit at, right? So if, you all plan on connecting with us via LinkedIn afterwards, which I highly encourage you to do such, putting in a note in there, hey, so great hearing and loved hearing you talk at the BGS presentation. That way I'll be able to know, okay, that's where you came from and I should connect with you. So Deidre, I don't know if you had anything additional, and maybe I missed the mark on that question, but.
No, I totally agree. And I think, it's really up to you to manage your LinkedIn brand and your LinkedIn network. I would say that Rob and I probably have a few more connections than the average Joe on LinkedIn, simply because our job is to recruit. So we're connecting with pretty much anybody that sends us an invitation. If they're interested in KPMG, we're interested in having us in their network. Whereas I would say when I was back in college and I was, an accounting major looking to get a role at one of the big four or one of the professional services firms, I had a much different intent. I was really connecting with both my peers that were in my college of business that I wanted to stay in touch with, not just in college, but beyond that, but also with folks that I thought could really help me to make that next step within, at that time, my audit career. So really, connecting after I went to a career fair, connecting with the partner or the manager that I spoke to. I would say that the way I used LinkedIn as a vehicle was a lot different. So I think that that's something that, as you're looking at it, really kind of consider, okay, what do I want my LinkedIn network to look like? Do I want it to be, quantity or quality? And I think that oftentimes it's your job or what your kind of end goal is that helps to drive that decision for you.
Perfect. So next question we have is, what is your suggestion on how to recover from an awkward interaction during a networking event or an interview?
I think that's a great question.
Totally agree. And Lord knows that both of us have been in situations where we have felt awkward and also been the awkward one. So it's something that I think the more and more you network is absolutely inescapable. And my first piece of advice is don't feel bad about it. We all have got those situations where even if it's on us, we're like, oh gosh, what did I do? I still remember back to my freshman year of college and going to my first event and being like, goodness gracious, I don't even know what I talked about or what I said, to make that impression. So recognize that we've all felt awkward in networking. In fact, there's a presenter at KPMG who goes around and he gives a presentation called The Awkward Networker. So I think the first thing to recognize is know that you're not alone. I also would say, if you're at an event that lasts 2 hours and maybe you have a conversation that's a little unsettling, don't hesitate to take a couple minutes to regroup, whether it's to freshen up in the restroom or maybe take a couple minutes to talk to another candidate versus a professional. It'll help you to really build your confidence back up. I also would say too that, if you are talking to a particular organization and those awkward conversations maybe are more the norm than the exception, it could just be that the organization isn't a great culture fit for you. And that still is something really valuable to take away from that experience to say, hey, maybe I'm looking for something that's got just a little bit of a different feel or taste.
Yeah, and the thing that I would just quickly add is, we're all human, we all make mistakes, things happen, right? And really don't take it to heart, as Deidre said, and really don't beat yourself down and use it as a learning experience, right? Like, oh crap, I completely messed up that conversation with the recruiter. Let me go talk to another professional at the firm and, be better or ask that better question or whatever it is. So really don't take it to heart. And, I just love having conversation with students, and I know Deidre can kind of resonate with that too. I don't really care if it's awkward. I don't care if you mess up, you come in with a script and you screw up on the script. Let's just have a conversation. Let's just get to know one another, because those are such more fruitful and meaningful connections and relationships than you being robotic and saying, oh, I have to hit X, Y, and Z when I'm talking to a recruiter or whatever the situation is.
100%. And practice makes perfect. I think the more you attend the events, the more you put yourself in those uncomfortable situations, the better you'll be able to kind of handle yourself when you're like, oh gosh, I forgot what I was going to say. You're able to, for lack of a better word, recover a bit smoother, the more and more you're networking and communicating.
Agreed.
So from a KPMG standpoint, how would one utilize their BGS membership during networking or interview?
I think first and foremost, when, me as a recruiter, I always ask, tell me a little bit more about yourself, right? And in that, you'd say your major, your 150 credit date, what practice, the office location you're interested in. But then also, mentioning it in an extracurricular, portion of being like, oh, outside of academics, I'm involved in BGS and my sorority or my fraternity or whatever other organizations you're in. I think that's a great part, but also using it as that networking piece with a professional, right? If it's a BGS sponsored event, you probably know that all the people there are BGS alums. So using that as a connection point, but also just bringing it up, using it as a situation for a behavioral-based interview question, right? Oh, in my BGS chapter, I was the vice president of this and I had to deal with this situation. So really interconnecting it and weaving it into your conversation, I think is really, really key and a really, really good way to bring up that you're involved in such a great and dynamic organization.
And one other thing that I'd note too is, I know this is bringing us back to 2019 when things were back live and in person. I had the opportunity to attend a BGS event actually in Schaumburg, so in the suburbs of Chicago. And I think the biggest piece of advice I have there is there are a lot of great organizations that really dedicate their time and treasure to BGS. And I know oftentimes those companies will, set up booths outside of your main sessions. And I think taking the tips that we've given, doing your research, whether it be in advance of coming to the conference or, maybe it is, oh gosh, I didn't know XYZ would be there. Let me pull up my phone and know what they do a little bit more. I think really coming to those conversations in a knowledgeable way will help you to stand out and really build your network, not just with KPMG, but with some of the other awesome partners of BGS as a whole.
We have a question for advisory. How many rounds does KPMG have and what are the types of interviews?
Yeah, I would say, all of our interviews are behavioral-based interviews. You're interviewed twice, once in front of a manager or partner, and then back to, again, in front of another manager and a partner. And that's consistent across all of our practices. So there'll be 2 30-minute interviews. They'll be behavioral-based, obviously getting to know you, allowing you to talk to your experiences, but we really want to know, do you have those problem-solving skills, those conflict resolution skills, those time management skills? And that's where you kind of bring up those different situations to showcase all of those opportunities that you've had or all those situations you've been in. So 2 30-minute interviews back to back, totaling 1 hour.
This one is, how do you break the ice and make a tactful and great connection or impression with our network? How do we make ourselves appear less shy despite being a shy and awkward person?
Sure thing. Well, I would first of all say that I think that giving yourself the label of being shy and awkward is barely that a label. I think, oftentimes, and I know I've harped about how practice makes perfect. Looking at where I was 11 years ago when I entered college, that makes me feel old. 11 years ago when I was a first semester freshman, I didn't necessarily have the same presence that I have now, being a recruiter, being in front of students, having the awesome opportunity to talk to so many different individuals. And so the biggest piece that I'd say is don't hesitate to practice. In fact, a lot of your career services centers have really great resources that you can leverage to feel more comfortable. Maybe it's doing a mock interview or a mock resume review. Perhaps, again, it's talking, when you go to a career fair, maybe it's talking to a company that you're less interested in first so that you really can warm up and feel more comfortable before you go to the company that you want to land that dream job at. I think also, one thing to note is that you really just want to bring your full self to the table. Really, both Rob and I have spent the duration of our careers at KPMG. And for me, it was just a gut feeling that, I connected with the individuals that were at the firm. I was able to bring, some of my quirks, who I am as a person to the table, and found that not only were those, aspects of my personality tolerated, but they were celebrated. And I think that oftentimes you'll find that at an organization that really is right for you.
Rob, I want to tell you that your note about being a trained extrovert, that was very well received by everybody in the chat.
Oh, good.
A lot of people seem to identify.
I'm always out here representing my introverts, and I was an RA back in college. Now I'm literally an extrovert talking to students and everything. So I had to train myself to do it. But for all my introverts out there, nothing excites me more than just sitting in my apartment, not really talking to anyone after a long week at work. But I'm glad that, the trained extrovert was widely accepted and very fond.
Well, if you guys have a few minutes, we have a couple more left. And then if we're unable to get to somebody's question, please do not hesitate to reach out. You can either connect with Beta Gamma Sigma directly, or you can also find Rob and Deidre on LinkedIn as well and connect with them. So one of our questions was, what would you say is the most memorable thing a person can say or do when attending a large group networking event where you talk to hundreds or more people?
Oh gosh, that's like the age-old question, right? It's how do I stand out in a big group of people so that I'm memorable, right? And I think that kind of like I had time to touch on this, right? It's that personalized follow-up and that personalized conversation of, getting to know me as a person or getting to know what I do outside of working, finding common interests, and then following up with that in an email or at another event, I think is really, really going to make you stand out, right? I have the same robotic, same conversations. What are you interested in? What practice? What office location? And if that's the only conversation I have with you, it's going to be very hard to kind of stand out, right? But again, if I can kind of pinpoint, oh, I know Deirdre loves dogs and we talked about her dog for 5 to 10 minutes, that's going to go a lot further in my mind, and that's going to make you stand out in a group of people. But, on that same accord too, it's being participative and asking questions and raising your hand and being that brave soul that's going to, okay, there are any questions, you immediately raise your hand and say, hey, I'm Rob, I'm from X, Y, and Z, here's my question. That's going to make you stand out too. So it's being very intentional and being very participative and, swallowing and, being the first person to ask that question in a big group of people is really going to make you stand out amongst your peers.
I also would say, and certainly this speaks to every company is different, but at KPMG, we oftentimes have a pretty long recruiting process. You have the opportunity to connect with KPMG in a single recruiting season, sometimes 5, 10, 15 times. And so oftentimes it's not just that one interaction you have at that one event that really makes a difference. It's the fact that Rob started coming to events his first semester sophomore year and connected to 15 individuals at KPMG and really just showed that he was earnest about wanting to join this organization that oftentimes helps you to stand out too. So it might not be, that one thing that you say, but it's just showing up and constantly showing that, excitement and passion for an organization that, again, really helps you to stand above from the crowd.
Another question we have is for somebody that maybe doesn't have a lot of LinkedIn connections because they are still kind of new, they're a student, they're still working to build up their connections. As a recruiter, do you take note of the number of connections a candidate has on LinkedIn? And is this something that they should be worried about?
I don't, no, not at all. I don't really care if you have 1,001, 2,001. You know, it's all about just building that network and building your brand and building it, you know, your LinkedIn profile up. But you are not going to not be selected for an interview because you have one less follower or one less LinkedIn connection than someone else. So no, I don't, and Deidre, I'm sure you resonate too, but it does not really matter how many connections you have.
No, and I'd say the biggest piece of advice is, you know, if you're going to be spending time on LinkedIn, you do, I mean, you're going to naturally build a network, but spend the time developing your profile. Because Rob and I might look and say like, oh, look, John Smith signed up for this event. And if we go to your LinkedIn profile and see, oh my gosh, he is president of his local fraternity. He's involved in BGS. He volunteers at, you know, Habitat for Humanity. The thought that you put into your actual profile, I think will go a lot longer than saying like, oh, I've got, you know, 670 followers.
Agreed.
All right, just two more left. One is, what common accounting questions does KPMG ask potential candidates? And I know that could probably go on for a while, but maybe just a couple.
I would say, you know, the first and foremost one is knowing when you're going to be graduating with your 150 credits to be CPA eligible, right? And that kind of determines whether you qualify for an internship or a full-time position. But, you know, we know that you do well in classes and you're taking those accounting classes. So I mean, Deirdre, you can feel free to disagree, but I've never asked a technical specific accounting question. Just knowing when your 150 credit date is super, super important and super, super helpful to us as recruiters to be able to steer you in the right direction for opportunities.
I would say the second piece of that too is beyond knowing when you're going to have your 150 is at KPMG, you can take accounting a lot of different ways. You can enter our audit practice, you can go into tax, you can go into deal advisory. There's different areas that you can explore. And once you decide which area you're interested in, being able to articulate, you know, why deal advisory, why audit, why tax, what about that particular group really excites you about starting your full-time career is really about as technical as we'll get in an interview. Is just to better understand, you know, why are you passionate about the position that you've applied for? I also would say that while I can say that about accounting, I can say that for pretty much every position at KPMG is our interviewers that are in the practice that you are looking to join are really just interested to understand, you know, why you want to make a career out of that. And I think really being able to tell that part of your story will help you to stand out.
Okay, another question we have is, there is somebody that is currently working for KPMG in the Dominican Republic, and they are looking to study abroad next year. Any tips that you could provide on how they may continue working for KPMG, but in another country? Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I think we were just thinking of, you know, how to appropriately answer and give you the best possible information. You know, I think that it's working with the office recruiter and kind of, you know, mentioning to them that you want to study abroad and you want to go abroad and you're looking to kind of work over there. And, you know, it's being communicative about it too, being intentional and saying, this is what I want to do and really want to see if KPMG can help it, you know, work and make it work, you know, wherever you may be. Also, definitely working with your office recruiter and, you know, your office leadership to see if that's possible.
Well, thank you, Rob and Deidre, so much for taking the time, for spending a little bit extra time with us tonight or this morning, wherever you're from, answering these questions, sharing some great information. As a reminder to any of our participants, if you have any additional questions, you are welcome to reach out to Beta Gamma Sigma. You're also welcome to reach out to Rob and Deidre directly for any follow-up questions. Thank you all so much. Thank you to both of you. Enjoy the rest of your day. And soon, hopefully the weekend's coming up. I hope everyone has a great weekend. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks you so much, guys.